Hey everyone, Karnak here, Star Wars Armada Explained. It's your buddy Pal. Thank you for joining me. We're going to be looking at the objective Fighter Ambush today. Fighter Ambush is a straightforward objective. It's something that benefits squadrons. There is no errata or clarification for this card, but there are a few timing caveats. I'll jump into that. Setup. Before deploying fleets, the second player sets aside all of his squadrons. After deploying fleets, the second player deploys all of his squadrons. Each of his squadrons can be placed as normal or at distance 1 of an obstacle, but all of his squadrons must be beyond distance 5 of the first player's edge. Special rule: after a squadron performs an attack against a ship, if the defender was dealt at least 1 damage card, the squadron's owner gains 1 victory token. If you look at the bottom right hand there, you'll see a victory token is worth 15 points, so pretty hefty. So remember, the timing of this card is after deploying fleets is when the setup for this starts. So that means you do deploy all obstacles first to start with. And anything that needs to be done in regards to obstacles, like the experimental retrofit stuff on the interdictor, things of that nature. Then before deploying fleets. So in the before deploying fleets part, remember the first player resolves all of his things first before the second player. Meaning if you do have things like Radis or Profundity, Rapid Launch Bays, stuff that takes place in the before deploy fleet phase, the first player needs to resolve all of that before the second player essentially yoinks away all of his squadrons. Or if the second player wants to, because again, you can resolve that time anytime you want, you actually can, as second player, pull squadrons aside and shove them in the rapid launch bays, because it's before deploying fleets. If you say, hey, I want to shove some fighters into rapid launch bays, let's pull that card out here, because again, what does that card say? Whoops, you think I'd be ready for all this stuff, but hey, sometimes I get a little ahead of myself. Oh my gosh. Here we go. Offensive retro. Rapid launch bays. Because again, what's the timing on this card? It's before deploying fleets. You may set aside a number of friendly squadrons. And again, when something shares the same timing, you determine the order that it goes in unless it specifically says otherwise. So if you did want to shove any fighters in the rapid launch bays, you can. Does that still help you at all with this card? No, because you still need to set aside all of your squadrons that are then still left over regardless. But, I mean, I just want to make sure I'm pointing that timing out. All right. So you do that. That's before deploying fleets. You set aside your squadrons or anything rapid launch bays, etc., as we talked about. Then, after deploying fleets is when we get into some other stuff. So what does that mean for first player? What does it mean for second player? Well, as first player, you can deploy as normal. You could, in this case, the first player is here on top. He could throw down a flotilla, and then you, as second player, you only have your ships you can put down. So you can put down a ship, but guess what? First player can then just use that to his advantage. He's like, you know what? I'm going to put down some squadrons. And you're like, oh, now I have to put down my other Star Destroyer. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to put down some more squadrons. And so in your situation where you don't, you can only put down ships and your opponent did bring a lot of squadrons, you will find your opponent can just plop down all of the squadrons, and then you have to put down all these ships. And he can not give away any information, essentially like where his large ship is going, and you, a second player, kind of a little bit on the back foot. But there's a flip side to that too, because if the first player, all he's doing is plopping down all of the squadrons right there and forcing you to deploy ships, guess what? You now know where all of his squadrons are going to. Sometimes you can use that information against him, especially when we get into this next part of the setup. So why don't we go ahead and throw down our other than MC-75 is going to deploy on the flank, so he's not facing both ISDs at once. And you know what? We'll plop down this other transport right there. Perfect. All right, so now it's after deploying fleets. Now, this part, again, it's after deploying fleets. The first player needs to resolve all of his first player after deploying fleet portion before the second player puts down his squadrons. This gets wrong all the time, in that the second player in a rush will then throw down all of the squadrons, and then people will set things like price. Then they'll set things like bail. and that's wrong. Punish the first player. He chose that objective. Punish him for it. Make him set price and bail without knowing where your squadrons are going. You can juke him out that way. Especially a player like Price, who's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to price on turn 2, and then guess what? You can punish him for that. By placing squadrons potentially near his carrier ship where you can threaten it or potentially maybe kill it. Again, use this information to your advantage. Don't skip over this important step because, again, first player first and after deployment phase stuff, then second player second. Okay? So now the second player can plop down all of his squadrons. And you can do it either as a normal deployment from your ships, like usual, distance 1 to 2. And I'll show that here. If you did want to put, some squadrons down, you know what, I want to put them 1 to 2, that's fine here. There we go. Or, as what it says there, you can place them at distance 1 of an obstacle, but all the squadrons do still need to be beyond distance 5. Meaning, if this is first player here, that second line from the top to the bottom, that's distance 5 there, that second horizontal line, that's distance 5. Meaning that you can't place any of your don't want to grab that. You can't place any of your squadrons in this area at all. They have to be beyond distance 5. But guess what? You see this rock out here? Maybe you want to place, again, at is just at that distance. Distance 1 is the black circle, 2 is the red, 3 is the orange. Again, that TIE fighter, he's just barely touching the at distance 1 portion, so he can go somewhere like here, and then he can engage all these X-wings. Maybe you want to do it that way. This objective is great for rogues. Maybe you put your rogues away from where his big squadron ball can't really get at him, but it can threaten some of his ships. I definitely do not recommend placing your squadrons at a distance where they can get alphaed and killed and you don't have the ability to command or react to what's going on. You definitely, as second player, this objective does require careful foreplanning and forethought into what you're doing. Something that some people do like to do, though, to kind of give a gotcha moment. This happened to me. Someone had a Quasar Fire, and on this Quasar Fire, they had equipped a Flight Commander. Where is he at? There we go. Flight Commander, which allows you to activate squadrons after completing your ship's movement. And they also had on their ship as well, in their offensive retro spot, they had boosted comms. So something like this, he had deployed all of his squadrons right here, and I did something like move a flotilla because again I'm trying to draw out the activations, and guess what this guy did? He had his Quasar Fire go from speed 2, which is what he had set at. Maybe you have Thrawn, maybe you have Pursuant. You still have a way to activate squadrons, and then guess what? Something that is, oh no, I'm out of range. Well, guess what? Now you can go 1. And then 2, even just speed 2, you can stay at speed 2. And guess what? Now all those squadrons are in range, and now you can activate them all. So I know I'm getting a little bit off topic, but again, this is stuff that you kind of have to keep an eye on for, that people will use this objective to their advantage in that way. And again, it's kind of my job to make sure, you can understand that this kind of stuff is totally going to happen and is allowed. All right. So that is the after deployment stuff to get back. So we've deployed all of our squadrons. Here we go. At distance 1. Or even this comes out distance 1 there. You could put a guy right there. Perfect. At distance 1. And again, you could even put them on the obstacles. Hide them in the obstacles. A lot of people do that. That's a great place to hide your squadrons you need to protect against things like Maul or Mythol. Things of that nature. So there you go. And then, what's the special rule for this card? Is anytime a squadron does an attack on a ship, if they suffer a damage card from that attack, you get a victory token for it. So again, it doesn't matter if you take off shields, if they redirect and all it takes off is shield damage, you get nothing for it. But if you do manage to get a hull damage on a ship, you get a victory token for it. And it doesn't matter if that damage card is face up or face down. It doesn't matter if you put 15 damage cards on them. It's just, it only counts 1 card. 1 token, and it doesn't matter which squadron does it. So this is great for squadrons that aren't like bombers typically. It's a great way to still farm some points. And this objective definitely can be helpful to you, but also, again, can be helpful to your opponent if he brought mass squads as well. But that's Fighter Ambush. Very straightforward. And again, if you do have things like interdictors, things like that, again, you can move these obstacles around. You can kind of out-juke your opponent in that way. As far as I'm aware, there's no other crazy interactions or crazy things going on here that need to be brought up. Of course, if you feel like anything's wrong, or if I got something wrong, please be sure to point it out. Let me know if you have any requests. As always, I do appreciate you guys watching the videos, and just leave some comments for me. I do answer them, do reply to them, and like always, I'll see you guys next time.